I am terrified by what my country is allowing to happen in Gaza, and the kind of stuff that we're slowly convincing ourselves is an acceptable baseline of violence in the world. As I write this, Israel is in the middle of enacting one of the most brutal bombing campaigns in modern history against the people of Gaza in Palestine. This campaign began on October 7th following an attack on Israel by Hamas, Gaza's de facto governing body. In the attack, Hamas took several hundred Israeli hostages, and in response, Israel launched an invasion of Gaza, an invasion which has killed tens of thousands of people and injured many more, and left Gaza's 2 million residents without access to food, water, or health care. Almost everyone in Gaza has been displaced from their homes, with over 1 million civilians having been relocated to refugee camps in Rafah, a town in southern Gaza. Israel's military is threatening, or I guess preparing, a ground invasion of Rafah, a move which will, without a doubt, result in unimaginable violence and suffering. And the U.S. is complicit. My tax dollars are being spent helping a right-wing goon thousands of miles away terrorize a refugee camp. I just finished reading an article on CNN by Jeremy Diamond, Mohammed Darwish, Abnir Salman, Benjamin Brown, and Gianluca Mezzafiore. The article from January was about the systemic way that Israel has been destroying Gaza's cemeteries. Ultimately, this is just a comparatively minor atrocity in a sea of atrocities happening in Gaza. As of my writing this, on March 16, 2024, Gaza's health ministry has reported almost 32,000 war deaths, and about 8,000 others missing and presumed dead. That's about 40,000 dead, almost 2% of Gaza's population dead, in just 5 months. And that's not even getting into how their bombing campaign has damaged or destroyed over half of the buildings and homes in Gaza, or all the devastated historical, cultural, and religious landmarks. But even in the context of all those other, more immediately pressing horrors Gaza is experiencing, this article about Israel defiling graveyards really got to me and made me want to share it. Israel claims that they were only unearthing bodies to check for dead hostages, and then respectfully returning the corpses to their original resting places. I find it hard to believe that they're treating the dead bodies with any respect, given the way that they treat Gaza's live bodies. To quote from the article, "The hostage identification process, conducted at a secure and alternative location, ensures optimal professional conditions and respect for the deceased," an IDF spokesperson told CNN, adding that bodies determined not to be those of hostages are returned with dignity and respect. But in other cases, the Israeli military appears to have used cemeteries as military outposts. CNN's analysis of satellite imagery and videos showed that Israeli bulldozers turned multiple cemeteries into staging grounds, leveling large swaths and erecting berms to fortify their positions. In the Shujaiya neighborhood of Gaza City, Israeli military vehicles could be seen where the cemetery once stood, with berms surrounding them on all sides. The central part of the Shujaiya cemetery was cleared before the war, according to local media reports. But satellite imagery showed other portions were more recently bulldozed, and an IDF presence visible from December 10th. At the Al-Fallujah cemetery in the Jabalia neighborhood north of Gaza City, the Al-Tufa cemetery east of Gaza City, and a cemetery in Gaza City's Sheikh Ejin neighborhood, destroyed tombstones and heavy tread marks pointed to heavily armored vehicles or tanks driving over graves. The armored personnel carrier transporting a CNN team last week drove directly through the New Barej cemetery in Al-Barej, a Palestinian refugee camp in central Gaza, on its way out of the Strip. Graves were visible on either side of the newly bulldozed dirt road, as seen on a screen inside the vehicle showing a live feed from its front-facing camera. CNN confirmed the location of the cemetery by geolocating its footage from inside Gaza that day and checking against satellite imagery. Munther al-Hayek's daughter Dina was killed in the 2014 Gaza war. In early January, he visited Dina's grave at Sheikh Radwan Cemetery in Gaza City, but she wasn't there. He tried to find his grandmother's grave. It wasn't there either. The occupation forces destroyed and bulldozed them. Hayek, a spokesman for the Palestinian opposition group Fatah in Gaza, told CNN, "The scenes are horrific. We want the world to intervene to protect Palestinian civilians." So why do this? Is this just the kind of dehumanizing humiliation that has always been popular with conquering armies? The kind that we pretend that our modern governments aren't capable of? Maybe this necroviolence is a way to rob the people of Gaza of their peace of mind, a show of force to remind the people of Gaza that they are at Israel's mercy, the type of violence that colonizers and conquerors have used since the birth of civilization. Or maybe this isn't just incidental cruelty. So much of the conflict in Israel and Palestine is about heritage. It's about who has ancestral claim to the geographical region of Palestine. Maybe these graveyards are a threat to Israel's claim of ownership on the region, a reminder that many generations have lived and died there since the days of ancient Israel, that the Palestinian claim to the region is much more concrete than the Israeli claim, which is a lot more abstract and religiously based. And it is not okay to use religion as a justification for violent colonization. You'd think we would know this by now. Look, I'm just speculating about the Israeli government's motivations. I'm not a geopolitics expert. I don't know what's best for the region in the long term. All I want is for the future to have as little bloodshed as possible. But you don't need to be a geopolitics expert to realize that Israel is ringing a bell that cannot be unrung, and I cannot condemn this on strong enough terms. Part of the reason I want to make this quick video is to scream out to no one in particular that my government is supporting something that is truly wrong, and I am outraged. The Biden administration has gone farther with their support of Israel than almost any other government on earth. Biden has gone around Congress to make more than 100 arms deals with Israel since the start of the war. His administration has vetoed 3 non-binding UN resolutions calling for an end to the violence, not to mention the fact that Joe Biden is incapable of getting in front of a microphone without defending Israel's right to indiscriminately brutalize the people of Gaza. In recent weeks, there's been a rhetorical shift in Washington, with Biden and his allies being more and more willing to criticize Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and less scared to call attention to the tragedy that is unfolding in Gaza. You can sense the fear. The thick haze of righteousness that set in following the October 7th attack has faded, and now our country has found itself knotted up in another Middle Eastern boondoggle overlooking a pile of corpses. Joe Biden's probably getting some war on terror deja vu. He was a massive proponent of the war in Iraq back in the early 2000s. He can probably see the writing on the wall that in the long term he does not have the winning hand that he thought he had. I guess maybe he reasoned that he could be like LBJ, the foreign war president with a moderately progressive domestic policy. But that just doesn't work in a world where we can see all the carnage on our phones 24/7 in HD. It's a lot harder to appreciate Biden walking on a picket line or whatever when you're constantly being reminded about just how much suffering this man is complicit in, and by extension me too. He needs to change course immediately, or that suffering will be his legacy. There's no more time for incremental change. The United States needs to sever diplomatic ties with Israel until they put an end to what I think could very appropriately be called a genocide. Netanyahu is a bastard, and this war serves no one except him and his cronies. Not the Israeli hostages, who are also trapped in Gaza and who are not bomb-proof. Not even his constituents. Violence begets violence. That's what happened on October 7th. That's what's happening now. And as bad as things have been so far, there's still room for things to get worse. Even if the conflict were to end yesterday, Gaza's entire infrastructure is rubble. Without immediate global action, there is still a lot of additional deaths on the horizon. We cannot let Gaza just become another desecrated graveyard. My prayers go out to the victims of this war and the families of the victims. Happy Ramadan to all who celebrate. I hope that the future holds a lot more peace and coexistence than we currently have on Earth.